In today's video, we're looking at the last photos taken before deadly animal attacks, from a Florida graduate student's fatal encounter with a bull shark to a Canadian photographer's deadly meeting with a mountain lion. But first, we start in Wyoming's pristine wilderness, where recent grizzly activity had drawn wildlife videographers into nature's most dangerous hunting grounds. It was August 22, 2016, when wildlife videographer Corbin Dax made his final descent into Lamar Valley. The early morning mist clung to the Yellowstone River as it wound through the expansive grasslands, creating an ethereal backdrop that had drawn photographers to this deceptively accessible stretch of Yellowstone's valley. The roadside pullout where Corbin parked offered sweeping views of the valley floor, where elk herds typically gathered during the rutting season. At 34, Corbin had built a reputation for capturing intimate wildlife footage that others deemed too dangerous to attempt. His companions that morning included a 29-year-old seasonal park volunteer and a 36-year-old outdoor gear marketing consultant, both experienced in backcountry filming. The trio had arrived before sunrise, hoping to document the increased grizzly activity that recent park bulletins had reported near the riverbanks. The signs were everywhere for those who knew how to read them. Fresh scat dotted the trail leading down to the water's edge, while overturned stones and deeply clawed cottonwood trunks marked the presence of a large predator. The morning air carried the musky scent of bear, and disturbed vegetation along the water's edge suggested recent feeding activity. Yellowstone cutthroat trout spawning had drawn grizzlies to the riverbanks in unprecedented numbers. Grizzly bears are among North America's most formidable predators, capable of reaching speeds of 35 miles per hour and possessing among the strongest bite forces of any land mammal. Adult males can weigh up to 800 pounds, with razor-sharp claws extending up to 4 inches. As fog lifted from the river, Corbin made his fatal decision. Against established safety protocols, he descended the steep cut bank alone, seeking a lower angle for his shot. His companions remained near the vehicle, assuming he would maintain visual contact and return quickly. Corbin had switched his camera to burst mode, anticipating the perfect sequence of shots as the morning light filtered through the mist. The grizzly emerged from the willow thickets without warning, its massive frame moving with surprising stealth along the riverbank. Corbin's finger was already pressing the shutter release when the bear reared up on its hind legs, releasing a guttural warning huff that echoed across the water. His camera captured the moment in perfect detail, the massive dark shape barely visible through his 400mm lens, yet startlingly close even at that magnification. The sudden movement of raising his camera triggered the bear's defensive response. The animal dropped to all fours and launched forward in a bluff charge, stopping just yards away with another explosive vocalization, jaws popping, ears pinned flat against its skull. But Corbin's panicked retreat up the unstable slope triggered the bear's predatory instinct to pursue fleeing prey. His camera, still set to burst mode, continued firing automatically as he stumbled backward. 23 frames captured in those final seconds, the last showing nothing but a blur of brown fur filling the entire frame as the grizzly charged directly toward the lens. The grizzly closed the remaining distance in seconds, its powerful legs propelling nearly 600 pounds of muscle and bone across the riverbank with terrifying efficiency. The initial impact sent Corbin tumbling backward onto the rocky ground, his camera flying from his hands. The grizzly was upon him instantly, delivering several crushing bites to his upper body and head, while its massive weight pinned him against the earth. Even after Corbin's body went limp, the grizzly continued its assault, driven by defensive aggression and adrenaline. Only when distant shouts from Corbin's companions echoed down the slope did the bear finally lumber away into the dense willows, casting backward glances as it retreated. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but the massive blunt force trauma and crush injuries had already claimed another victim to Yellowstone's unforgiving wilderness. When investigators recovered Corbin's camera from the rocky ground nearby, they discovered that it had continued recording even after the attack began. Its internal microphone captured capturing 47 seconds of horrifying audio that would become crucial evidence in understanding the bear's behavior, though the footage was deemed too disturbing for public release. Park officials launched a comprehensive investigation, ultimately determining that the attack resulted from a surprise encounter with a defensive grizzly protecting its feeding territory. Corbin's family established a wildlife safety foundation in his memory, emphasizing the importance of maintaining safe distances from dangerous predators and following established protocols in bear country. The legacy of that August morning extended far beyond the immediate tragedy. Park rangers began implementing stricter enforcement of wildlife viewing distances, with mandatory bear safety orientations for anyone venturing into the backcountry with camera equipment. The tragedy in Lamar Valley would not be the last fatal encounter that year. Just months earlier, another wildlife enthusiast had ventured too close to nature's deadliest predators, but this time the setting was an ocean rather than a mountain valley, and the predator lurked beneath the waves rather than among the trees. It was June 11, 2015, when marine biology graduate student Lainey Mirth waded into the darkening waters of New Smyrna Beach, Florida. The Atlantic coastline stretched endlessly in both directions, its white sand beaches giving way to murky waters where the Ponce de Leon Inlet created perfect conditions for marine life. As evening approached, surf had calmed to gentle rollers, creating an ideal environment for the coastal species, photography that had brought Lainey to this notorious stretch of water. At 27, Lainey had dedicated her academic career to documenting near-shore fish behavior, particularly during the transitional periods when predators moved closer to shore. Her partner that evening was a 31-year-old surf instructor who had spent years navigating these waters and understood their seasonal patterns. The conditions that evening should have served as clear warnings to anyone familiar with predator behavior. Massive schools of baitfish had been reported throughout the week, their silver bodies creating dense clouds visible just beyond the sandbar. The tide was shifting from high to low, reducing water clarity and creating the murky conditions that apex predators preferred for hunting. Great white sharks are among the ocean's most formidable predators, capable of reaching lengths of 15 to 20 feet and weighing over 5,000 pounds. These apex hunters possess serrated, triangular teeth up to 3 inches long, designed for gripping and tearing through flesh and bone. Unlike smaller coastal sharks, great whites are known for their devastating hunting technique, attacking from below with tremendous force, often breaching the surface entirely. As light levels continued to drop, Lainey made her fatal decision. Despite the reduced visibility and her partner's concerns, she waded chest-deep beyond the protective sandbar. She had secured her waterproof camera to her wrist, hoping to capture the unique lighting conditions as golden hour transitioned to dusk. Just minutes before the attack, she had snapped what would become her final photograph, her partner standing waist-deep in the surf, giving a thumbs-up signal. The image captured the golden hour lighting perfectly, with the water appearing deceptively calm and inviting. Behind him, what appeared to be seaweed or a school of fish cast a dark shadow in the water, a detail that would later chill marine biologists when they realized they were looking at the massive silhouette of the great white shark already stalking the area. The great white had been patrolling the area, drawn by the abundant baitfish activity. In the fading light, Lainey's silhouette from below resembled that of a seal, the shark's preferred prey. The attack came with explosive violence from directly below. The massive shark surged upward at tremendous speed, its jaws already open. The impact lifted Lainey partially out of the water as the predator's teeth clamped down on her upper thigh and hip with devastating force. Her waterproof camera, still strapped to her wrist, was triggered into automatic burst mode by the sudden violent motion. Through the chaos of blood and water, the camera somehow captured 12 blurred frames of the encounter, images showing the massive pale underside of the shark and its gaping jaws. The serrated teeth penetrated deep into muscle tissue, severing the femoral artery and causing catastrophic vascular damage. Her partner's screams cut through the evening air as the water exploded in violent thrashing. The great white maintained its grip for several seconds before releasing racing and descending back into the murky depths. Blood immediately began pouring from the massive wound, creating an expanding crimson cloud. The final photo on Laney's camera, taken at 7:31 p.m., showed only crimson water and the fading light of dusk, a haunting testament to how quickly the ocean had turned deadly. Laney's partner reached her within seconds. A massive bite had created a gaping wound across her upper thigh and hip, with arterial blood pumping into the water in rhythmic spurts. Nearby beachgoers and a lifeguard rushed into the water to assist. Together they pulled Laney towards the beach, her partner maintaining pressure even as blood continued to pour between his fingers. The journey to shore consumed precious minutes as rescuers fought the current while trying to stem the massive blood loss. By the time they reached the shallows, her skin had turned deathly pale, her eyes losing focus as hypovolemic shock from the catastrophic blood loss took hold. Emergency responders arrived to find rescuers performing CPR on the sand. Despite their immediate efforts and the tourniquet applied by paramedics, the severity of the arterial damage had allowed fatal blood loss during those critical minutes in the water. Laney was pronounced dead at the scene, approximately 12 minutes after the initial attack. When investigators retrieved Laney's waterproof camera, the haunting sequence of images told the story of those final moments with devastating clarity. Authorities classified it as an unprovoked incident consistent with great white shark predation behavior. Analysis of the bite pattern confirmed the attacker as a large great white, likely between 14 and 16 feet in length. Laney's family established a marine safety awareness program, emphasizing the importance of understanding predator behavior before entering the water. Yet even as investigators worked to understand what had driven this ocean predator to attack, another deadly encounter was unfolding thousands of miles away in a very different environment. Unlike the vast openness of the Atlantic, this next victim would find himself trapped in an enclosed space with one of Africa's most dangerous predators. It was March 4th, 2018, when maintenance supervisor Judson Pike entered the service corridors of a privately owned wildlife sanctuary in South Africa's Limpopo province. The facility sprawled across several acres of bushveld terrain, housing rescued big cats in large enclosures designed to mimic their natural habitat. At 41, Judson had worked at the sanctuary for over 6 years, combining his electrical training with hands-on experience in wildlife facility maintenance. His routine-driven approach and familiarity with daily procedures had made him indispensable to the understaffed operation. That afternoon, he was responding to yet another false alarm from a perimeter sensor that had been malfunctioning for weeks. African lions are apex predators capable of generating bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, with powerful jaws designed to crush bone and sever spinal cords. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and measure over 8 feet in length. Judson made his fatal mistake through a cascading series of errors that afternoon. When Judson received clearance to enter the buffer corridor for routine sensor repair, neither he nor the control room operator realized a critical error had occurred during the morning's enclosure rotations. The lion, a 380-pound male named Tao, should have been secured in his primary night enclosure while maintenance accessed the buffer zone. However, miscommunication between morning shift workers and afternoon staff resulted in Tao being left in his secondary holding area, which shared the same buffer corridor Judson was authorized to enter. The control room's monitoring system displayed outdated enclosure status information due to a software glitch that had gone unreported for days. When Judson entered the corridor, he checked the clipboard mounted near the access door. Following routine protocol, he pulled out his phone to document the faulty sensor for the maintenance log, snapping a photo that showed the problematic mechanism in detail. Unbeknownst to Judson, his documentation photo had inadvertently captured something far more sinister in the background. Through the chain link fencing visible in the corner of the frame, the golden form of Tao could be seen lying in what should have been his secured night enclosure. The timestamp would later prove crucial in establishing that the lion was already in the wrong location when Judson entered the corridor. Tao had been resting in the shadowed corner of his holding area when the corridor door opened. The enclosed space, barely 15 feet wide and stretching 40 feet in length, provided no escape routes. The lion's territorial response engaged immediately as it detected an intruder in what it perceived as its domain. The attack attack came with devastating speed. Judson had taken perhaps a dozen steps down the corridor, phone still in hand, when Tao launched from the shadows. The security cameras captured every horrifying detail. At 2:17 p.m., just 3 minutes after his documentation photo, grainy black and white footage showed him walking confidently down the corridor, completely unaware of the massive predator watching from just meters away. The lion covered the distance in 3 explosive strides, its massive weight colliding with Judson from behind and driving him face down onto the concrete floor. The lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Judson's neck and shoulders in a crushing bite that severed critical blood vessels and damaged the cervical spine. Tao's canines penetrated deep into tissue, tearing through muscle and crushing vertebrae as the predator shook its head violently. Judson likely lost consciousness within seconds from the combination of head trauma, blood loss, and spinal damage. The lion continued its assault for several minutes, driven by predatory instinct. The attack was discovered when the control room operator, noticing the discrepancy in enclosure status logs, attempted to radio Judson for confirmation. When he failed to respond, an emergency protocol was initiated. Staff members found Tao standing over Judson's motionless body through the corridor's observation window. The emergency response team used compressed air blasts and barrier boards to drive the lion back into his primary enclosure. Paramedics pronounced Judson dead at the scene. The catastrophic injuries to his neck, skull, and torso had resulted in death within minutes of the initial attack. Provincial authorities launched a comprehensive investigation into the facility's safety protocols. The sanctuary faced immediate closure pending complete operational overhaul. Judson's final photograph became key evidence in the investigation, its timestamp and background details helping investigators piece together the sequence of failures that led to the tragedy. Judson's family filed wrongful death claims against the facility, citing negligent procedures and inadequate safety measures. While Judson Pike met his fate through a preventable operational failure at a South African sanctuary, travel blogger Vera Craig's journey through Brazil's Pantanal wetlands would soon prove equally fatal. It was October 19th, 2017, when travel blogger Vera Craig made the decision to take a shoreline shortcut through Brazil's Pantanal wetlands in Mato Grosso. The vast floodplains stretched endlessly in all directions, creating one of the world's largest tropical wetland areas, where countless waterways meandered through dense vegetation. At 33, Vara had built a following documenting remote eco-routes throughout South America, specializing in off-the-beaten-path destinations that mainstream tourism had yet to discover. Her companion that day was a 45-year-old local boat operator who had navigated these waters for decades and understood the seasonal patterns that governed wildlife movement. The decision to leave the boat and walk the riverbank was driven by time constraints and the promise of reaching a scenic river bend before sunset. The exposed banks showed clear evidence of recent wildlife activity, with fresh tracks pressed into the soft mud, revealing the presence of large predators. Jaguars are the America's most powerful big cats, possessing the strongest bite force of any feline species at over 1,500 pounds per square inch. These apex predators can weigh up to 250 pounds and measure over 6 feet in length, with muscular builds optimized for crushing bone and penetrating thick hides. These solitary hunters are perfectly adapted for wetland environments, being excellent swimmers and capable of taking prey both in water and on land. Vara made her fatal mistake when she chose to walk along the water's edge at dusk, the prime hunting time for jaguars. Her focus remained on reaching the destination quickly, but she couldn't resist stopping for what would become her final social media post. At 4:42 p.m., she positioned her phone to capture her muddy hiking boots at the water's edge. Focused on composing the perfect shot, she failed to notice the large paw print visible in the mud just inches from her left boot, a fresh Jaguar track that followers would later point out in the comments, not knowing they were looking at evidence of the predator that was already stalking her. The Jaguar had been stalking silently through the riverside vegetation, using the natural cover to approach undetected. These predators are known for their patience and ability to remain motionless for extended periods before striking. The attack came with explosive suddenness from the dense vegetation along the bank. Just 23 minutes after her final Instagram post, the Jaguar launched itself in a short, powerful burst that covered the distance to its target in a fraction of a second. Vara's camera, still in her hands from documenting the journey, captured one final, terrifying image in the split second before impact, a blur of spotted fur and gleaming fangs as the Jaguar erupted from the vegetation. The timestamp read 5:05 p.m., marking the exact moment when adventure travel turned into a fatal encounter with one of nature's most efficient killers. The initial impact drove Vara to the ground as the Jaguar's powerful forelimbs secured its grip. The predator's massive weight and momentum made resistance impossible, while its claws tore through the victim's clothing and deep into flesh. The Jaguar's attack focused on the neck and shoulder region with devastating effectiveness. The predator's canine teeth, measuring up to 2 inches in length, penetrated repeatedly into vital areas as the powerful jaws clamped down with crushing force. The combination of deep puncture wounds, crushing pressure, and rapid blood loss led to shock and loss of consciousness within moments. The attack continued for less than a minute before Vara's movements ceased entirely. Death occurred rapidly from the combination of blood loss, tissue damage, and potentially cervical injury from the violent shaking and crushing force. Shouting erupted from the direction of the boat as Vara's companion realized what was happening. The Jaguar immediately released its grip and bounded back into the dense vegetation, disappearing within seconds. The boat operator reached Vara within moments, but the extensive injuries made survival impossible. When investigators later examined Vara's camera and phone, they found the chilling progression from her confident Instagram post to the final blurred image that would never be shared. A stark reminder of how quickly confidence could turn to catastrophe in the wilderness. Local authorities launched an investigation into the incident, working with wildlife officials to understand the circumstances. The Jaguar was not pursued, as officials determined it had acted according to natural predatory instincts when humans entered its territory during prime hunting hours. Vara's family established a wildlife awareness foundation focusing on the importance of respecting predator territories and understanding animal behavior in remote locations. While Vara Crag met her fate through South America's apex predator in Brazil's wetlands, landscape photographer Kellen Trove's quest for the perfect shot in Canada's wilderness would soon prove equally fatal. It was May 27, 2015, when landscape photographer Kellen Trove pulled his vehicle into a gravel turnout along the Kananaskis Trail in Alberta, Canada. The Rocky Mountain foothills stretched majestically in all directions, their snow-capped peaks creating a dramatic backdrop against the clear spring sky. At 38, Kellen had established himself as a respected nature photographer, known for his patient approach to capturing the perfect interplay of light and landscape. His family had accompanied him on this particular outing, positioning themselves near the vehicle while he scouted for optimal shooting locations. The forest corridor that caught Kellen's attention wound through a mixture of spruce and pine trees, offering glimpses of a rushing creek that promised dramatic photographic opportunities. Recent reports had mentioned increased wildlife activity in the area, including sightings of a habituated cougar that had been displaying unusually bold behavior around human settlements. Cougars, also known as mountain lions, are North America's second-largest wild cats, typically weighing between 130 and 180 pounds and measuring over 8 feet in length. These solitary hunters are perfectly adapted for ambush predation, using their tawny coats to blend seamlessly with forest environments. Their hunting strategy typically focuses on delivering a suffocating bite to the throat, using powerful jaw muscles to compress the windpipe and major blood vessels until the victim loses consciousness. Kellen made his fatal mistake when he decided to follow the narrow game trail alone into the dense tree cover, seeking a clearer angle for his photography. His focus remained fixed on the photographic possibilities ahead, ignoring the increasing signs of predator presence. At 3:47 p.m., he found exactly what he was looking for: the rushing creek visible through a gap in the trees, with dappled sunlight creating the magical lighting he had been seeking all day. The shot was perfect, and he clicked the shutter without hesitation, capturing what would become his final photograph. When investigators later examined the high-resolution file, they discovered something that would send chills through the photography community: enhanced and enlarged flashed. The image revealed unmistakable golden eyes and a tawny coat lurking in the deep shadows at the edge of the frame. The cougar, already positioned and watching from the dense undergrowth. Kellen had unknowingly photographed his own stalker. The cougar had been tracking human activity from the moment the family arrived at the pullout. The predator had likely been observing from concealment, waiting for an opportunity to investigate the intruders. The attack came without warning just minutes later, as Kellen moved deeper into the forest corridor. His camera, set to continuous shooting mode in anticipation of wildlife encounters, would tell the horrifying story of his final moments. The cougar launched itself from behind with a powerful leap that covered the distance to its target in a single bound. When the camera hit the ground, its continuous mode was automatically triggered, capturing 14 frames of the encounter in a horrifying sequence. The photos showed the cougar's powerful hindquarters as it pinned its victim, then close-ups of fur and claws as the attack unfolded before the lens became obscured by forest debris. The initial strike drove Kellen forward onto the forest floor as the cougar's claws anchored deep into his upper back and shoulders. The cougar's hunting instincts immediately guided it toward the throat bite that would subdue the struggling prey. The cougar's jaws clamped down on the throat, applying crushing pressure to the windpipe and carotid arteries. The sustained compression of the throat caused rapid oxygen deprivation to the brain, while damage to major blood vessels accelerated the process. Kellen's consciousness faded as the relentless pressure continued, his body's struggles gradually subsiding. The last clear image from his camera, time-stamped at 3:52 p.m., showed only the forest floor and scattered pine needles, a mundane final frame that belied the violence occurring just beyond the camera's view. The cougar maintained its suffocating grip, repositioning several times to ensure complete control. When the predator finally sensed human voices approaching from the direction of the vehicle, it released its hold and vanished into the forest cover with startling speed. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but the severe throat trauma and prolonged asphyxiation had already proven fatal. Kellen's family, who had called out for him and discovered the scene, could only watch helplessly as medical personnel confirmed what they already feared. Officials launched an investigation into the incident, ultimately determining that the attack resulted from a territorial encounter with a habituated cougar. The cat was tracked and destroyed due to its proximity to human settlements and demonstrated lack of fear around people. When investigators recovered Kellen's camera equipment, the sequence of images told a chilling story, from the peaceful creek scene that had unknowingly captured his stalker to the violent final moments of the encounter. Kellen's family established a wilderness photography safety foundation, emphasizing the importance of maintaining awareness of predator presence and avoiding isolated areas during peak activity periods. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.